And then I'll even sometimes pull out my phone while I'm watching TV. And then it's like, well, hold on a second. So the challenge right now is that we absolutely have things that are addicting, which have not quite reached the threshold for many people of impairment of function. When your life is a haze of technology use, you don't become a person. What happen with our attention is instead of taking the stairs, we're taking the elevator all the time.
How do you know if you're addicted that we're going to spend 20 years of our life on our phone? And when we hear that and we go, a couple weeks ago, I heard a professor from NYU say that you and I are going to spend 20 years of our life on our phone. 20 years. And when I heard him say that, it scared the hell out of me. And I wanted to figure out what I could do to change that, because I don't want 20 years to go by and I've just wasted it scrolling on social media. So I reached out to Dr. K, who is a Harvard-trained psychiatrist. He has a massive following on YouTube and also on Twitch. He has hopped on a plane and he is here today in our Boston studios to talk to you about how technology is changing your brain, your relationships, and your identity. And the fact is, technology is not going anywhere. So it's not a matter of getting rid of it. It's all about how do you get control of it so it doesn't control you. I am so excited to be able to share this episode with you because I know it's going to change your life. It's going to change how you think about this very important topic, but it's also going to be a resource that you're going to want to share with everyone that you know and love. Alrighty, let's jump into this with Dr. K. Dr. K, thank you for jumping on a plane. Thank you for being here in Boston. I have been dying to talk to you, and I cannot wait to dig into all things just brain and neuroscience and gaming and addiction and what tech is doing to us. But I want to start by saying, could you tell the person that's listening right now what they might experience in terms of a change in their life if they really take to heart everything you're about to teach us today?
So I think the biggest thing that they're going to learn is how to stop letting technology shape you. So technology is shaping all of us, whether we like it or not. If you're using technology, it is shaping the way that you think. It is shaping the way that you perceive the world. It is shaping your sense of identity. It is shaping what you want, and all without your knowledge or consent. And so in order to turn yourself into the person that you want to be, you have to be aware of how technology is shaping you and counteract that influence. And then if you want to be that way, then go for it. But all of this is happening without our knowledge or awareness. And so that's what we really need to change. It's crazy. So, there are research studies on something called the attention marketplace.
Okay.
Which is like people have started to realize that your thoughts and your mind are a commodity to be bought and sold. So there's research on something called neuroeconomics, which is like shaping things like purchasing behavior, what you want to buy. It's not even advertising. It's gone deeper than that because we're doing brain scans and stuff like that. And so like people are like literally studying and competing for your attention. So all of the big platforms are fighting for your attention because the more of your attention they get, the more money they make. The problem is it doesn't matter which platform wins. The one person who always loses is you because you don't have control of your attention.
Well, I think that's a really interesting way to look at it because first of all, we don't understand how much technology is taking control of our brains and our lives, and we need to understand that. And then the second piece is nobody's going to get rid of it completely. And so we got to understand how to have a healthy relationship with it. And I absolutely am going to dive deeper into more of the nuances around what to do when somebody is addicted to gaming or social media, how to talk to somebody who is, like all of those specific things. But I kind of want to stay a little bit more broad.
Sure.
Because I think it's fascinating that back in 2015, you had the insight to say tech addiction is a thing. And so I'd be curious, Dr. K, what exactly is technology, modern technology, doing to our brains?
The short answer is a lot. So here's the first thing that we have to understand. So when we look at most addictions, we tend to think about substance use disorders.
Yes.
So these are things like alcohol or opiates or marijuana. So this is a discrete biological chemical which travels to various parts of the brain and activates usually one kind of receptor. So we have the GABA receptor for alcohol, we have opioid receptors. And so it's a very targeted effect. The thing with technology is if we look at the evolution of technology, technology used to activate just one part of our brain. So originally with video games, you would activate the dopaminergic circuitry, which is what gives us pleasure. But then over time, people are adding more features to technology. Facebook used to be a way to stay in touch with people, but then with the like button, you could get some social validation. It's not just about an advanced form of like, a contact list. Now it's my identity is becoming virtual, my profession is becoming virtual, my relationships are becoming virtual. So like so many other parts of the brain are now being affected. It's basically like a whole brain effect at this point. It affects our sense of identity. It affects our sense of pleasure. It regulates our emotions. It alters our attention span. It does everything. And what people are basically discovering, what developers are discovering is that the more of the brain that I can affect, the more people will engage with me because now I'm not just activating this one circuit. Now you can use technology for everything and your whole brain can get into it. And that may sound kind of confusing, but see, people who play video games, their relationships are online. Like I had a friend that I started playing video games with when I was 15. I had never met them before, but I invited them to my wedding. And like they showed up. So this is someone who was my friend for like 13 years. And they're a real friend.
Well, I think one takeaway so far, Dr. K, that's already super helpful is that even just the reference to Facebook, when it first launched on the scene, it was a way to stay in touch with people. It was like, clearly the Facebook from college. It was a way to share pictures with people, a way to stay connected to your high school friends, to your first cousins, to your family members. And when you started to tick off all the ways that these platforms are now in our life, the like button makes it part of your identity. Do people like me? Do they not like me? The number of followers says something about you. It is a huge part of your professional life, like being on LinkedIn or on Zoom, or if you are an entrepreneur or you're like trying to launch some sort of business, it becomes a marketing platform. Everybody's on these dating apps, which are basically social media networks as well. And so our lives have slowly started to become wildly intertwined with the technology. And this is why kind of our knee-jerk response is just delete the app. Oh, just do this. Oh, just stop playing the thing. And I think the genie's already out of the bottle on this.
I think so. That's the challenge. Is that so? I think it kind of dawned on me that like technology is kind of like introducing an invasive species in a new environment, where there's no natural checks and balances, and then the species just explodes. And technology is like an invasive species for our brain. So it starts to colonize different parts of our brain. And you'll see this if you've struggled with technology or you know someone who's struggling with technology. That's just always literally where their mind goes. It's what they think about when they wake up in the morning. First thing that we do is we pull out our phone, we browse Reddit or Instagram or whatever, right? It's the last thing that we do before we go to bed. We're thinking about it. If we're in the elevator, we're doing it. If we're sitting in a cab, we're doing it. If we're on the toilet, we're doing it. So it's really invaded every corner of our life. It's really scary.
And, I think that is a very interesting point, because if you're ever standing in line at any kind of store, look around. Everybody is filling that time by looking at their phone. And so, you've focused a lot of your earlier career as a psychiatrist on gaming addiction, but this is really about how it has invaded our brains and our lives in every single way. When I look at somebody who is spending hours just filing through videos and surfing online, they look like they're numbing. Is that like a thing?
It's literally what's happening. And it's happening in both cases. So basically a lot of studies show that one of the major effects on the brain is the suppression of our amygdala and our limbic system. So these are the negative emotional circuits of the brain. So if you kind of think about like, everyone's kind of hung up on dopamine, and dopamine's there, but I think a lot of the addictive qualities are about pushing the negativity away. So when you're scrolling on your short form platform of choice, doesn't matter, TikTok, YouTube, whatever, what happens is if you're having a bad day and you start scrolling, like what happens?
You feel relaxed.
Yeah. I wouldn't even say, yeah. So sometimes it can be relaxing. That I would say is actually good. But oftentimes what it does is distract us from the negativity.
Oh.
So what happens is it is a relief from your anxiety, but I would not quite call it relaxing. It can be. Sometimes there is because I think about relaxation as a positive emotional thing,
That's
right?
true.
So what we really see is a lot of emotional numbing. And then what happens is we get stuck in this cycle because when we use technology to suppress our emotions, our brain does not process emotions. So if you really like look at it, I mean, some of this is supported in science, some of it is just my conjecture. But human beings used to have a lot of idle time in our brains. So if you look at like for the majority of evolution, we did rote tasks. We would do things like churn butter or like make rope, right? And if you think about that, like the mind is relatively free. So as I'm going throughout the day, I get worried about something, I go hunting with a buddy of mine, I miss my arrow, he hits his arrow, I feel inferior, we walk 2 hours back to camp. Over the course of that walking, my brain has time to process. Now what's happened is if you look at what goes on with our attention, we have zero idle time in the brain. And the problem is that chances are our brain has evolved to use that idle time. So we know, for example, even like with dreams, that the emotional content of dreams has to do with the emotional content of your life. And as we interfere with dreaming, as we have, these different medications that will affect our sleep stages, the restfulness that we get changes. So our brain is actually, even when you're not thinking about something, your brain is doing a ton of work. But now what we've stopped doing is giving our brains time to process information, process emotions, because we're constantly externalizing our attention. And so the more that we externalize our attention, we reduce process times, emotional processing in the brain. As we reduce emotional processing in the brain, what do we see? A rise in just about every mental illness characteristic.
Dr. K, as I'm sitting here listening to you, and I had asked you about, sort of this numbing effect that being on a short form platform or playing a video game is having on our brains. And I said, oh, well, it can be relaxing. Here's what I just realized in listening to you, that I definitely see that, I've got this like busyness throughout the day. My brain is always engaged. I'm running from one thing to the next. And scrolling on social media is a lever that I pull to turn the busyness off. But as I'm listening to you, I will be very honest, it's not relaxing. When I go outside for a walk and I don't have my phone on me, that is a very different state in my brain.
100%.
And so even calling it that I'm relaxing is me kind of succumbing to what's happening with tech addiction and the casual numbing that you're doing all day long.
All day long.
All day long.
All day long. It's beautifully said. So this is where there's a difference between numbing our negativity and relaxing, right? And that's what technology is really good at. There are some times where you're on technology and you do get some positive, right? So if I'm watching like cat videos, like I can genuinely laugh, right? So it does release dopamine. There can be some amount of relaxation. And I'm not anti-technology, by the way. I think it's just we need to understand what effect it's having so that we can compensate.
Yes.
But absolutely, this is what we see is a lot of numbing that goes on. And then what happens is people you'll notice that a lot of people who use technology have difficulty going to bed at night. Because once you stop the technology, what happens? There's a flood of mental activity. There's a flood of emotion. And then I have difficulty going to sleep. And since I'm not sleeping because my mind is running a mile a minute, what do? I pull out my phone. And once I pull out my phone, now my mind is relaxed a little bit, right? At least it's focused. It's not running in 1,000 different directions, solving 1,000 different problems that I can't actually solve right now anyway, because it's 10 p.m. at night. What am I going to do? So then I hop on my phone for half an hour and I wait till my exhaustion becomes so profound that it overcomes that emotional flooding before I go to bed.
Holy smokes. You just described every person that's listening.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Because I think we've all had that experience, and I will get a little bit later in our conversation. There's so many kind of foundational things I want to cover. I promise we will get to your recommendation for what the evening routine should look like. But I personally understand exactly what you're saying. You you shut the laptop down, you put your phone away, and there is that flooding of activity in your brain. And then it never fails. Calm yourself down by just scrolling back at your phone.
Absolutely, right? So I don't know if people are like this. I do this a lot where like even if I watch TV before bed, I will turn off the TV and then I'll pull out my phone.
Yes.
And then I'll even sometimes pull out my phone while I'm watching TV. And then it's like, well, hold on a second. what are we doing here? Like, what's the point of this? Am I trying to enjoy this show? Like, what's happening?
Well, Dr. K, what is happening? Like, what is happening in that moment? Because I do feel like there are so many of us that don't want to turn over 2 hours a night or more just to mindlessly scrolling. And, you know, we were talking with Professor Adam Alter, who was saying that we're going to spend 20 years of our life on our phone. And when we hear that and we go, we want to stop, but what's actually happening in your mind? Is this a sign that you're addicted?
Sure. So let's define a couple of terms.
Okay.
So the first is like, what do we mean by addiction? So generally speaking, when we use the clinical term of addiction, we're talking about something that impairs your function. Okay. So when we say that someone is an alcoholic, how do I know if I have a problem? Basically, if it is causing problems in your professional life, in your personal life, social life, mental health or physical health, that's when we really think about this is an addiction. So the challenge right now is that we absolutely have things that are addicting, which have not quite reached the threshold for many people of impairment of function. So everyone struggles with addiction to their phone, but they're not quite failing out of college, or they're not, getting reprimanded at their job. They're able to have relationships. And that's what we're starting to see, is that technology is squeezing itself, because if there's actually like a really negative consequence, it's easier to stop. So there's all kinds of stuff that's going on. It's absolutely shaping our behavior and taking control away from us. And there are all kinds of like innovations that are designed to do that.
Like what?
So biometrics or Face ID. So if you look at this, like, this is really important to understand. So when I was in college, this was like early 2000s, and I was studying, I would get distracted when I was reading a textbook. And my distraction would last maybe 2 minutes. And then since I didn't have a phone at the time, that distraction only cost me 2 minutes. Then my mind wanders away and then it focuses back on the task at hand. Right now, if you get distracted, it will cost you an hour. So all you have to do is catch that impulse. If you just look at your phone and you have Face ID enabled, boom. So when you have that impulse, app developers are reducing the barrier between impulse and action. And they know that once you look at one post, you're stuck for 45 minutes. You will scroll. So now what they're trying to do is figure out, if this person has a single impulse, how can I get them to the first video? Because then we've got them hooked. The fish has taken the bait. They're on the line now. So that's where what we're seeing is that the price of an impulsive distraction is becoming way higher. So I think teenagers spend somewhere between 4 and 6 hours a day on their cell phone. It's crazy, right? And
I would think even more, honestly.
Yeah, that's average. So how does that happen? It's because they hook you for a few minutes and then you lose an hour.
And here's a question that I think it might sound dumb, but I really mean this. How do you know if you're addicted? And I say that because, I can stand there as a parent, Dr. K, and look at my 25, 24, and 19-year-old, all of whom have their phones in their hands, all of whom are cranked down with their neck scrolling. And as I'm yelling, guys, get off your phone, I got my phone in my hand.
Absolutely. So in a weird way, I'd say it's the wrong question, because I think we get caught up in whether we're addicted or not addicted.
Okay.
How do you know?
What's the right question?
The question is, do you want to use your cell phone? Are you intentionally using technology in the way that you want to? That's the question. Right? So at the end of your day or at the end of your week, if you look back and you look at all of your technology use, are you happy with how that's working? Are you like, man, I'm so glad that I spent 2 hours and 10 minutes scrolling on TikTok at 11 p.m. on a Thursday?
No, I'm not happy.
So
I feel like a fucking loser that I'm turning all that time over to some dumbass app.
I don't care if you're addicted or not. The question is, do you want to change? Are you happy with your technology use, right? So we can answer the question, right? So if it impairs function, so if it's interfering with something, and fair enough, we'll talk about all those negative effects. So it is doing things like shortening our attention span. We're seeing a rise in the diagnosis of ADHD. We're also seeing a rise in the subclinical ADHD manifestations. So a lot of people, even if they don't have a diagnosis, they identify with having ADHD. And why is that? It's because technology does the attentional work for you. So this is where I know I'm going off on a tangent,
great.
But so when I'm reading a textbook, I have to force my mind to pay attention, which means that I'm actually strengthening this capability in the mind. So the mind, whatever you stretch and whatever you exercise is what gets better, right? So if I spend a lot of time, listening to music, my brain will actually do neuroplasticity, will get better at listening to music. So our brain requires, the more we practice focusing our attention, the better we will be at focusing. Now what happens is with things like short form content, we saw this a lot with short form content. They do all the hard work for you. Because if something doesn't hold your attention for 15 seconds, you scroll past it, right? So everyone is engineering content so that you are just like you're sitting and someone else is driving. And so you don't have to focus on your phone. You don't have to force yourself to focus. It does all the focusing for you. So what started to happen with our attention is instead of taking the stairs, we're taking the elevator all the time. So we are deconditioning our minds, and then it becomes harder to focus.
Which is why you will stand in a grocery store line, and instead of just enjoying a moment where you're not doing anything, you have to look at your phone.
Absolutely.
Because your brain is being programmed and conditioned to need attention, to need something, to need stimulation. And it's happening to you in real time. If you're sitting here and you're contemplating the question, because you just said, don't ask if you're addicted. Ask, am I satisfied and happy with the way that I'm using technology?
That's the main question.
Which is why you will stand in a grocery store line, and instead of just enjoying a moment where you're not doing anything, you have to look at your phone.
Absolutely.
Because your brain is being programmed and conditioned to need attention, to need something, to need stimulation. And it's happening to you in real time. If you're sitting here and you're contemplating the question, because you just said, don't ask if you're addicted. Ask, am I satisfied and happy with the way that I'm using technology?
That's the main question.
And if the answer is no, I am not. I am giving too much time. I'm spending too much money. I do not want to feel beholden to this thing. What are some of your top habits or strategies, Dr. K, to take control of the amount of time you are spending on your phone or gaming or on social media?
Great question. So I think there's two approaches.
Okay.
So a lot of people will say just uninstall.
Yep.
Oftentimes people will have this experience where it's like, okay, I uninstalled YouTube and then I installed TikTok the next day, right? So like people will just swap out apps. So this is where what I've sort of found is that there are underlying drivers of behavior and then there are kind of environmental things.
Okay.
So let's talk about the environmental things first. The first thing that I would recommend is that you don't use your cell phone for the first, or any technology for the first hour when you wake up.
Okay.
Now, this is really important to understand.
Okay.
So what a lot of people don't realize is that you have a certain capacity for pleasure and behavioral reinforcement when you wake up in the morning. You have only a certain number of units of pleasure and behavioral reinforcement.
Got it. So if I have a cup of capacity for both pleasure and behavioral reinforcement, you're saying that when you wake up, that one cup is already full?
So our dopaminergic circuitry in the brain, in this part called the nucleus accumbens, basically this is what gives us a sense of pleasure and also reinforces our behavior. So the problem with dopamine is we wake up in the morning and our dopaminergic stores are full. So what happens is we have a reserve of dopamine. And if you want something with delayed gratification and your dopamine stores are high, you can work a lot, but then when you get the payoff, since you have a bunch of dopamine, you get a strong dopamine release, and then you feel really good. So the way that this works is like, I want y'all to think about this. So let's say I wake up first thing in the morning, and then I work for 4 hours, and then what is the reward, the subjective reward that I feel after 4 hours of work? It's really positive.
Yeah.
Then if I use technology for 4 hours, it's kind of whatever. But if I use technology for the first 4 hours of the day, and then I try to go and do work.
You're not going to.
You're not going to. And even if you finish the same amount of work, you will not experience the same level of pleasure because your dopamine has literally been depleted.
Got it.
So the way that I kind of describe this is imagine that you have a lemon that is full of juice.
Yep.
So at the very beginning, when it's full of juice, a small squeeze gets you a lot of juice. But by the end, you have to squeeze a lot to get very little juice. This is how dopamine is in our brain.
So in other words, if you tap into technology and it invades your circuitry in your brain, it literally is like squeezing most of the juice out of the lemon first thing in the morning.
First thing in the morning.
And then that means that it's also going to impact your ability to do the work or to focus or to feel joy and all those things that normally, if you did those things first, you'd feel a sense of reward and joy for.
Yes. So technology is like a hard squeeze. So if we use it first thing in the morning, we squeeze the lemon really hard and we get all the juice out. And then you have nothing left to feel good about because all of your dopamine stores have been depleted. If you engage in a dopaminergic activity at the beginning of the day, you don't have as much dopamine to reinforce and feel pleasure for other activities. That's like just how it works, right?
Okay.
So we're emptying our lemon at the very beginning. So then working on your resume or finishing your resume, there's nothing left. So you don't reinforce the behavior.
Gotcha.
This is what gets people so confused about why they're not motivated. And even when they move in the right direction, their brain is not getting a positive reinforcement to repeat that behavior because the brain is empty. There's no pleasure left to feel. And that's what'll happen. If you are on technology for 8 hours a day, you start working at 4 p.m., you won't feel exhilarated by 8 p.m., even if you do the same amount of work.
Well, I think this happens even if you spend 10 to 15 minutes in the morning.
Yes, that's because technology is a vice of a squeeze, right? So you get a lot of juice, you empty your lemon very quickly with technologies. Okay. Now let's talk about disconnection from the self.
Yes.
So this is fascinating. So if you look at disruptions in our sense of identity, what we know from studies on trauma is that when someone gets traumatized, there's this part of our brain called the corpus callosum, which connects our right hemisphere and our left hemisphere. And people who get traumatized will dissociate. So they will feel disconnected to themselves. What we know is that dissociation happens in part because there is a decreased connection between the right and left hemisphere. So our left brain is logical, our right brain is emotional. That's somewhat true, actually. And so what happens is we divorce our emotion from our logic. So when someone is being, let's say, like abused or something like that, they will feel emotionally numb through the whole experience. That is a defensive mechanism. So the emotions are overwhelming. So we're dispassionately, this negative thing is happening. I don't feel anything. So they feel numb. So anytime you numb your emotions, your sense of identity goes with it. So this is what's really interesting is you can look at studies of people who have gender identity difficulties and even autism spectrum. And it's been hypothesized that one of the reasons why people on the autism spectrum are much more likely to be non-binary is because they actually have less emotional connection to themselves. So our sense of self is formed by emotional experiences. So if I ask you, Mel, who are you? What would you say?
God, I don't know.
Tell me about yourself.
Well, geez, you're so smart. I'm embarrassed to get the wrong answer. Tell me about myself.
There's no
I
wrong
am a 56-year-old married woman with 3 adult kids. My favorite thing in the world to do is to empower and inspire people. I love learning. I'm a super positive person. I'm curious about how to squeeze the most juice from my life.
Great. So we can pause right there. So what I want you to pay attention to, and everyone who's listening, is the statements that you made are about your emotional experience. So you mentioned that you're married, sure, is demographic, but I would venture that your marriage is a strong emotional part of your life.
Oh, my relationship with Chris is the most important thing
right?
in my life.
So, and then you talk about curiosity, you talk about love. If we go further, we'll hear about trials and tribulations.
Yeah.
Right? So if you literally look at the way that your sense of identity is built, it's a string of emotional experiences. Like my story is failing out of college, addiction, going to India, rising in some ways to the top of my field, right? So these are all emotional experiences. So our sense of identity, literally, if you ask people, who are you? It's our emotional moments that matter. That when I went through that divorce, that made me who I am. When I survived cancer, that made me who I am. When I ordered chicken salad for the 7th day in the row, that didn't make me who I am. There's no emotion with it.
I get this. And so basically, you see as a psychiatrist and an expert in gaming addiction, and that since tech and social media makes us numb, that is an experience lacking this emotional connection, which is what you need for a sense of identity.
Absolutely. When I work with these like gamers who, I'm 26. What have you been doing with your life? Well, since I was 18, I've been sitting at home playing video games. There's one element of emotion to that, which is I'm a loser. So that becomes their identity because they have no span of emotional experiences because the technology is literally numbing them out, right? And so once you don't have that emotional experience, like think about it. Like when your life is a haze of technology use, you don't become a person.
Well, I
you
think
become
that's what most people are, honestly. Like you wake up, you sleep with your phone, you look at your phone, you commute with your phone, you sit down at work, you're on Zoom, you're on email, you're constantly staring at a screen. There's a massive, massive state of disconnection that people are feeling right now. They're not calling it that, but that's what I'm sensing.
Yes. So let's understand that, because you mentioned autopilot and identity. So now this is where autopilot comes in. So once I'm not connected with myself, what prompts my behavior? What prompts my motivation?
More numbing. Like the same thing. You're just sort of on this like...
Absolutely. So that's why we become autopilot. Why do we become autopilot? Because
oh my God.
there's no signals.
I just got something. And then on top of it, because you need some level of force or some action to be able to take a different type of action, put the phone down, get outside and go for a walk, because you have allowed technology to invade your brain and squeeze all the dopamine juice out of your brain, you don't actually have that will within you.
Absolutely.
To take the action.
Perfect. Right? So what happens is we numb ourselves to our identity. And what is it that prompts us to do something with our lives? It is our sense of identity. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a good person. I want to empower other people. I want this. Right? So we lose connection with our internal self. So then what happens is normally what happens in a healthy identity is I have internal drivers, and that gets balanced with the outside world. The world expects this of me. This is what I want to do. There's a healthy conflict there. Now what's going on is we are numbing ourselves to the internal. There is no internal anymore, which means we become autopilot. What does autopilot mean? This means that my actions, my behaviors, my desires, my goals are actually being conditioned in my mind. I watch this kind of social media, I think I need a thigh gap. I watch this kind of thing, I need to get this kind of thing. I need to have a side hustle, right? I need to do this now. So now what happens, and then we feel like we're not in control of our lives because we have all of these goals that social media is feeding us. And then we get super confused. Should I do this, or should I do this, or should I do this? The reason you're confused is because none of it is coming from you. One day this person is telling you this thing. The next day someone is telling you this thing. Everyone's saying, get this bag today, use this supplement tomorrow. Right? This is what autopilot means, because we are not driving anymore. We are being driven.
So Dr. K, now that we sort of see the implication and the fact that technology is moving faster than our brains can catch up, and it is now designed to put you in this state, because when you are in this state and you're on your phone all the time, other people are making money off of that attention. The longer that you stay on your phone, the more money people make. And when you understand this, you now have a choice about how you're going to use technology instead of being used by it.
Absolutely.
And I want to get into a couple like tactical things.
Sure.
So you just gave us all a massive wake-up call.
So I'd say there's short, medium, and like long-term interventions.
Okay, so let's talk about what do I do right now?
Right now. So the first thing is that remove all of the things that make it easy for you to access your phone.
Like what?
So remove Face ID, remove biometrics. You have to use your little login, whatever, every single time. Make it hard for you to access.
Okay.
So what we want to do is increase the time between an impulse to use your phone and access to your phone.
Okay.
So practically what I'll also tell people is don't carry your phone around. I know it sounds crazy, but when I go home, I set it in a different room. I don't keep it near me.
Same.
So create space.
Okay.
Second thing is no access to addicting apps on your home screen. You got to fucking go to the app section of your app, open up your whole panel of 800 apps and find it that way. Reduce access.
Okay.
So if you reduce access, there's a chance you can ride out the impulse. And what basically happens is anytime we give our brain instant gratification, it reinforces the behavior more. So you want to make it difficult for you to access. If you want to uninstall apps, go for it. So this is even stuff like you could save your logins in a browser, but don't have the native app. So if you really need to use the thing, use the web app, and it's going to be annoying and frustrating. Yes, that's the point. So make it hard to access.
Okay. And by the way, I want you to consider that it's not just you're making it hard for you to access it. I want you to really absorb what Dr. K is saying. You want to make it hard for all of the social media apps to access you.
Well said. Brilliant. I knew you were going there, and that's exactly it, right? So what we want to do is, These apps are not designed to have you have a healthy relationship with them. They're designed to increase your unhealthy relationship with them. So whatever game they want to play, we want to try to tug of war in the opposite direction. So first thing is remove your impulsive access to whatever the stuff is. So this is also where like I won't keep a lot of stuff on my phone. I'll keep it like logged into my desktop.
I like that idea a lot.
So here's another thing that I think will really get people insane. So I try to work minimally on my phone and try to almost never work on my phone at all. So there's a huge problem where everyone's like, okay, we're checking email on our phone. We're doing this. We're doing this. The problem is once you're in your phone, how many times do you just do work and don't do anything else?
Never.
So this creates a problem because now you have a good reason to be on your phone. But the good reason then turns into bad reason because it's easy to switch from your email to something like TikTok. So easy. So that's where like work is for work and fun is for fun and separate those two things.
Great.
Now, a lot of people will push back and they'll say, but I need my phone for work.
Right. I'm in real estate. I'm in this. I'm in that. I'm the other thing.
If you need it, then that's a different story. But oftentimes it is convenient is different. Like you can sit your ass at your computer and check your email like 4 times a day. And like you could probably be okay there. You don't need
here's another thing you could do. If you truly have a job that you are tethered to your phone because people need to text you, email you, and call you, great. Have a work phone and don't have any social media apps on it.
Yes. You know, your spouse may be paranoid because now you've got 2 phones, but that's a separate bridge that we can get to.
Just don't put a password on it.
Yeah,
then they can look at anytime they want.
So I think that's great, having a second phone. So we want to reduce our impulsive access to technology. That's kind of short term. Medium term is some of these other things, like we want to be super careful about using it an hour after we wake up and an hour before bed.
Well, let's talk about that. Dr. K, what is your morning routine that you recommend if I really want to get control of my use of technology and not allow social media and all these apps and everything on it to get access to me? What is the morning routine that you would recommend?
What I would recommend is for the first hour, just no technology. So this starts with even things like an alarm where, so I'll sometimes set an alarm, but I tend to find that my biological clock, and this comes with meditation, you just wake up when you tell your mind when to wake up and it can wake up. But if you have to start with an alarm, that's fine. So one thing I would say is like, keep your phone like at distance from you.
Yep.
And then because here's the thing, we have a lot of stuff to do, right? That we never get around to. Just do all that stuff. Take out the trash, just wake up, make your cup of coffee, and then do whatever else you need to do. So I'll meditate in the morning, for example, for about 21 minutes. So I'll do all of that kind of stuff. And then like I'll shower and I'll get ready. And an hour gets eaten up very quickly. You'll also find that like your day starts way better, right? Because you don't waste that 28 minutes and then 12 minutes on the toilet and then 5 minutes here. So just start off trying to avoid using your phone.
So Dr. K, speaking directly to the person listening, if there were one thing that you would want them to take away as an imperative, like something to do from this, other than forwarding this conversation to everybody that they know and love, because every person needs to hear exactly how you just framed this, what do you want the person listening to act on today?
The most important thing for them to do is nothing. So when it comes to technology, if you want to get control of your technology, what you need to learn how to do is nothing. Technology can only invade your life if you let it by acting, by picking up the phone, by taking it to the bathroom, by pulling it out in the elevator. Do nothing. Get better at doing absolutely nothing. Pace, sit, get bored. We have this great exercise we do in our community that is transformative for about half of the people who do it, which is stare at a blank wall for 1 hour. Some people,
1 hour?
1 hour, absolutely. Oh my God, 1 hour. We spend 4 to 6 hours a day on our cell phone doing absolutely nothing. 1 hour, it's like shocking. Everyone's like, oh my God, 1 hour. That's even the junior version. The senior version is take a flight without any entertainment, without anything to distract your mind. Just take a flight and be bored for 6 hours. Go for it.
And what happens when somebody takes this invitation and just sits in a room and stares at a wall for an hour?
So some people will have catharsis. Like all kinds, they'll get bored for the first 15 minutes. Their mind will start to think about things. They'll sometimes engage with their thoughts. Sometimes people start crying. There's just so much suppressed emotion that everything starts coming up. Some people are just bored for an hour and their mind wanders and it's like not that big of a cathartic journey. But even then, that's a win because now you've tolerated boredom for an hour. You are increasing your resistance to boredom. It is your resistance to boredom that will allow you to resist technology. Because what does technology offer you? It offers you an instant relief of boredom.
What are your parting words, Dr. K?
The only reason we're losing this war is because we haven't been fighting it. So a lot of people will look at this and think, oh my God, like everything, we're saying it's going to get more invasive. Everything is getting worse. Everything is getting worse. But we haven't been concertedly fighting it. I'm not talking about regulation and Congress and like all that stuff is great. You should do that. But I'm a clinician. So my target is one person and how do I help this person? And what I found is once you start trying to fight this and you equip yourself with some knowledge of how it works, you will be amazed at how easy it is actually. It'll be difficult for a while, but then you will get good at it. The problem is that we've been fighting this war with our blindfolds on. We don't know how our brains work. We don't know how we don't know how any of this stuff works. So there's a lot of hope. And we just need to start fighting it in relatively the right way. You don't have to do it perfect. And you'll be amazed at how much things can cascade in the right direction.
I cannot thank you enough for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, I think it's high praise coming from such a high impact podcast where you guys have so much impactful stuff.
Host Mel Robbins and guest Dr. K, the two delved into the profound influence of technology on our lives. Dr. K highlighted the pervasive impact of technology on our thoughts, perceptions, identities, and desires, often occurring without our knowledge or consent. He emphasized the need for individuals to become aware of this influence to take control of their lives. Dr. K introduced the concept of the attention marketplace, where tech giants compete for users' attention, which has become a valuable commodity. He explained how this competition leads to extensive research and brain scans aimed at understanding and shaping purchasing behavior. The result is a battle for attention that users inevitably lose as their focus and time are hijacked by these platforms. Mel Robbins drew parallels to the science behind retail store layouts designed to entice customers, illustrating how technology, particularly social media, is strategically crafted to capture and control our attention. This manipulation, according to Dr. K, not only affects how long we spend on these platforms, but also shapes our thinking patterns and behaviors for profit. Mel Robbins and Dr. K explored the profound effects of modern technology on our brains. Dr. K explained that unlike traditional substance addictions, which target specific receptors in the brain, technology now impacts multiple brain regions, creating a whole brain effect. Initially, technology like video games stimulated pleasure centers through dopamine. However, as technology evolved, it began affecting more aspects of our brain and life. Social validation through features like Facebook's like button, virtual identities, professional engagements, and relationships. Dr. K noted that as developers discovered the more brain areas they could engage, the more users would interact with their platforms. This extensive engagement alters our sense of identity, emotions, attention span, and pleasure regulation. Mel Robbins highlighted how platforms like Facebook, originally designed for staying in touch, have now woven themselves into various facets of our lives: personal validation, professional networking, marketing, and even dating. She pointed out the complexity of disentangling our lives from technology, emphasizing that simply deleting an app is no longer a feasible solution. The conversation underscored the deep and pervasive influence of technology, making it clear that it has fundamentally reshaped our brains and lives. They discussed how technology impacts the brain, particularly through emotional numbing. Dr. K explained that many people use technology to suppress negative emotions by distracting themselves with endless scrolling or gaming. This behavior inhibits the brain's natural emotional processing, which traditionally occurred during idle times. Mel Robbins noted that what she initially considered relaxing, scrolling through social media, was actually a way to numb her busyness, contrasting it with the genuine relaxation she feels when walking without her phone. Dr. K clarified that while technology can provide moments of joy, it primarily leads to emotional numbing, which can disrupt sleep and exacerbate mental health issues. Understanding these effects is crucial for managing technology use effectively. Dr. K explained why many people have difficulty falling asleep after using technology. He noted that turning off devices often triggers a flood of mental and emotional activity, making it hard to sleep. To calm this mental activity, people often reach for their phones again, creating a cycle where they scroll until exhaustion forces sleep. Mel Robbins related this to her own experience, where she often finds herself scrolling on her phone even after watching TV. Dr. K explained that this behavior indicates a type of addiction, defined by its impact on daily functioning. Though phone addiction may not cause severe disruptions like failing at work or school, it significantly shapes behavior and reduces control over attention. Dr. K highlighted that technology developers design features to exploit impulses, making it easier to get hooked. This leads to prolonged engagement with devices, sometimes for hours at a time. The discussion concluded with Robbins reflecting on how widespread this issue is, even among her own family, and questioning how to recognize and address this addiction. Dr. K emphasized that the key question isn't whether one is addicted, but whether they are satisfied with their technology use. He urged people to reflect on their intentionality. Are they using technology in ways they genuinely want to? Dr. K explained that technology, especially short-form content, conditions the brain to require constant stimulation and reduces attention spans. This conditioning leads to behaviors like checking phones in idle moments, such as standing in line rather than enjoying downtime. He pointed out that the problem isn't just addiction, but whether one's technology use aligns with their values and goals. If people feel unhappy with their usage, spending too much time or money and feeling controlled by their devices, it's a sign they may need to reassess their habits. Top strategies to control phone and technology use. Dr. K. Nimoi. Avoid technology first thing in the morning. Start your day without screens to preserve dopamine levels, making other tasks more rewarding and easier to focus on. Understand dopamine's role. Morning reserves, using technology early, depletes dopamine reserves, reducing pleasure from other activities. Impact on motivation. Early tech use makes productive tasks less satisfying. Strengthens sense of identity. Emotional connection. Excessive tech use numbs emotional experiences, weakening your sense of self. Build identity through emotion. Engage in real-life activities that provide emotional depth and meaning. Practical steps. Gradual reduction. Reduce screen time incrementally rather than abruptly uninstalling apps. Foster emotional experiences. Replace tech use with activities that enrich your emotional life and build your identity. And by following these strategies, you can improve focus, motivation, and personal well-being.